Mainstream mental health is flawed, and I'm pulling back the curtain. I'm Andrea Clark, a former family therapist who walked away from the system to expose the truth. After my own journey from medication maze to holistic healing, I'm here to challenge the status quo and reveal the mental health truths most people don't know. The truth about mental health is your radical roadmap to wellness. Raw stories, expert insights, breakthrough solutions. This is where traditional modalities end and real healing begins. Glitter sparks, sighs of relief, and all because introverts and empaths were encouraged to bring all of their whole being to the table versus denying or gaslighting themselves of worry, fear, and doubt. Denicia Hilton Harper gets jazzed to show them that when these and other signals pop up, they contain information about the relationship dynamics with their self and with others. On the perfect playground, Denicia invites introverts and empaths who care for others to play their way to discovering their unique journey to navigating boundaries, burnout, and being authentic, using the signals coming from the whole body as guidance. When seeing the connection between the expression of core desires and holistic signals popping up in the whole body, while practicing as a doctor of Oriental medicine and a holistic well-being consultant, she's on a mission to provide tools and trainings that can be used for them to experience rich relationships with self and others sustainably without sacrificing themselves along the way. So let's get into it. Hi, Denicia. Welcome.
Hey, Andrea.
I'm so pumped for this conversation.
Ditto. Let's ride.
Let's do this. Okay, so I'd love for us to maybe just start with a little bit about your journey to becoming a doctor of Oriental medicine.
Yes.
And your practice and like why are you choosing to serve people this way?
Okay, so I would say that I had to come into agreement with what I was assigned and to actually agree to do it. Because originally, when I was younger, I actually wanted to be a marine biologist. And I know since then, like in my whole spiritual journey of learning about different things and whatnot, what then ended up happening was outside of that is I wanted to go into medicine. And we were in and out of the hospital a lot growing up. And I just remember being very curious, and I was always asking questions about certain things, wanting to know how things are working and all of that jazz, right? What happened was one day I had that itch, like I'm missing something. It doesn't feel quite right. Then I had another curveball when I went to go and meet up with a sorority sister. And she's like, well, what if you could treat patients a different way? And I was like, what do you mean a different way? Like there's another way? And so she's the one who actually introduced me to acupuncture Oriental medicine, and then specifically contemporary Oriental medicine, because that's the lineage that I trained in. Why I said yes was because of the way that the medicine views the people. You weren't seen as a part. You were seen as a whole person. And then practicing the medicine became a journey of how do we facilitate this with someone and them recognizing their wholeness and them realizing that what's showing up in the physical form is an expression of how they're living out in their life.
I love that. So for people listening in, I know what you mean when you say looking at the person as a part, because that's the same in mental health, except for family therapists. They're taught to look at the whole system, the whole family, the whole person, the environment, everything. But all other practitioners are very much taught to look at symptoms or a part or a piece, which for me makes zero sense. But I think that that's something that not a lot of people understand of how a typical practitioner is taught to look at their patient. Can you just speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah. And I will try my best to delineate generalities versus Denicia's style of biowork.
Totally.
So the medicine, like Eastern medicine, goes in with, you're starting out foundationally, everything's connected. Yeah. And then you're starting out with, all right, even though everything is connected and there's a macrocosm, you can hone in and look at a microcosm. So some area specifically and then be able to gather information from that, as it can represent the whole body. That's one way.
Right.
Then the other way is you can hone in and say, like, all right, well, this system, like this organ system, has a role to actually play to the functioning of the whole body, the whole person. That one's starting to express itself in the form of these signals. What is it telling us? I kind of see everything as a playground, all right? I see there's a space playground, but then there's you. You're the playground. Some type of fight that starts, right? But you kind of go in and you're like, dang, who started it? And then they go back and forth, right? It wasn't me. Well, I only did it because you did such and such, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like that. You're looking at seeing the state of these phases and these organ systems. How are they interconnected and related with one another? Because of that, it's trying to self-correct, right? And now I'll say this, because not just within the practitioners, but you see it online as well. It's like, what herbs can I do for blood deficiency? What foods for blood? That's mitigating a symptom. It's the same thing.
Yeah, totally.
But when you can actually get into evaluating someone's life, past, coming up to present, and then their outlook on the future, then you can start to see how the systems, how the whole body is actually in relationship to that environment. But then when people say mental health, that's where I want to ask them, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like, so and oftentimes it's like, well, I just want to be at ease. I don't want to feel anxious anymore or depressed anymore or sad anymore. Okay, that's cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, how does that show up? How does that look? Well, the anxiousness comes whenever I'm getting ready to go meet my family. That's what we really need to address. The anxiousness is a response to that.
Yeah.
But you still are about to run through it like crazy, because you still have to address what is it about that dynamic of going to meet your family. And then over time, you're addressing if there's the change in the foods and whatnot. Like, some people, as they address that, they actually realize that their cravings change as well. And it's like, super great. That's exactly it. Like, when you kind of add that stuff in, it mitigates.
So this kind of leads me to what we were talking about before. Like, you take this whole body approach, and I know you have already touched on this, but I want to talk about it specifically in regards to mental health, because really they're mental and physical are one and the same. And I think people struggle with that concept. Our physical can be screaming at us when we think we're really mentally solid, right? Like, that's my story, is I'm a really resilient person. However, my health took a massive decline because I used to be really good at like pushing through, white knuckling it, right? Like just handling things. And my body was like, no, we're not doing that anymore. And so I think people don't always understand that, though. People don't understand how deeply connected our mental and emotional well-being is to our physical, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love for your from how you practice and your perspective and all the lenses you work with, can you share a little bit more about that?
I would say that one of the first things for many people is when we are looking at mental health, and it's like this paradox that I see, because they really want to feel well. But isn't that interesting that they say they want to feel well, but they actually don't want to feel?
Yes, some people do not want to feel.
And so then therefore
it's uncomfortable to feel.
And so it actually is a coping mechanism, because it's another way that you can maintain yourself in your head.
Yeah.
And if you're in your head, then you're dissociating from the rest of the body. So then now that's where we can explore, where did this dissociation stem from? And for many people, it could have been some type of assault, unwanted assault onto the body. And it comes in many forms.
Yeah.
It could be simply you getting vaccinated when you were 3 days old. It can be, yes, sexual assault also, but it's just like to go in and try to be as neutral as possible. None of these are hierarchical. Nothing is worse than another. It just simply is. What it is on a personal level. At some point, you might have felt like you did not have choice over your own body. you kind of like, that's when it is that we'll start the dissociation. It's like, well, I can't even like do what I want with my own body. Like somebody else is going to make the choice and somebody else is going to do it. You know what I mean? When we do that disconnect, we're doing it in a way of self-preservation.
Yeah.
And then at some point, though, it will want to reconnect because that wholeness is our natural state.
Yeah.
And so when we're feeling those things like in the body, in the physical, and I'm doing this, it's like my hands are at my neck and then going down. And that's because the mental part many just stay only in the head, right? And we have some points that are even along the neck and that are called ghost points. And I thought that was really fascinating because that's where we can bottleneck ourselves.
Ooh, let's talk about that. What is that?
Yeah, like there's literally these points, like ghost points is in acupuncture. You can needle these points and then it would just all of a sudden open up a whole new way of seeing. And so when you're working with someone, you see that, the way that they're seeing themselves and seeing other people, there is a disconnect. I wonder if I needle these ghost points. It's kind of like you think about a ghost as kind of like they're lingering and you don't really know what it is. It's just very interesting that they are on the other parts of the body, but there are a lot of them more around the neck. And
it makes sense to me though. Like think about it's connected to our brain. It's connecting to our body. So powerful, the nervous system right here, right? That it makes sense to me why there would be more in this area.
Precisely. And then what else is around there? That thyroid. And then you hear, well, most women are diagnosed with thyroid issues. What's a common thing?
Crazy.
What's a common thing though amongst women? Whether or not they're going to express themselves in the way that they desire.
Yeah.
Do they feel comfortable to do so? Had they tried to do it before and it was not taken well or taken for granted, not listened to, and yet there was still some type of assault on there?
Yeah.
How is it that they are expressing themselves? Are they repressing it so much just to try to make it through? And then you're burning through those minerals that actually the thyroid relies on.
Yeah. I mean, I'm watching my daughter do it right now at her dad's house. She comes home and I'm like, oh, did you talk to him about it? And it's like, no, I don't want to get in trouble or I don't want to upset my stepmom or, he doesn't listen. So I'm watching her. She's very, she's my kid. So I've empowered her to speak her truths and share her feelings. And that's not so much over there. And it's a perfect example because in some ways it's like considered benign, right? Like it's like, oh, okay, you're getting shut down by somebody, but it's so profound. Like I'm watching her actively struggle. And this is like a perfect example. It's not always these huge catastrophic things that we think as people, like the way that we think of trauma. I mean, these things are little micro traumas that are happening to her regularly that are affecting her voice and her health and subconsciously and all of these things, right? I just wanted to give that as a little example.
And I appreciate that because that's when, and I said it that way because I didn't want people to think that I was either minimizing or gaslighting any type of traumatic experience because I'm not. It's actually personalized. They're looking at the body's response to an experience, right? And then that determines if that was like traumatic enough where it couldn't recalibrate itself to that person. So this is where it is that you want to like even observe yourself. Are you judging and creating some hierarchy for yourself about your own experience? And that's how people would gaslight and bypass themselves. And then where are you doing it for onto other people? This is something I actually noticed this with myself years and years ago. And then I realized like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not just me, but I'm picking up on this. Is that like where it is that we're doing that for other people, it's actually within ourselves. It might be something that we might want. And that's why we're calling it out. That's why we're so upset. And we might be jealous. We might be envious, but you don't want to call it that. You might just want to be mean and be petty, right? And that's the way that our society has groomed it to make it a little bit more acceptable. But then, like, even then in the case with your daughter, right? Like if I was in your shoes and in your position, then it's like, yeah, really great prime opportunity for her to see that not everyone is either going to want to hear what it is that you have to say. Two, depending on what it is that you're wanting to say, is it that you're doing it from a state from your wholeness, or are you seeking acceptance or agreement? Is that what you're actually seeking versus I just want them to listen to me? Because sometimes that little nuance really can make a difference for people, especially when they start to exhibit behaviors that they're seeking approval, they're seeking acceptance, they're seeking agreement. But when they can really realize, like, just because someone may not be welcome to hearing it does not mean that for you it's not valid. And then how is it that you can express this, though? How still can you express what it is that you're desiring to say? And so that at least it gets that part gets processed, it gets out there, right? What she's learning now can definitely be used in other areas of her life as she grows, right? And as she just interacts with other people and getting jobs and, all of that, as like if she does Girl Scouts or something like that, like it's all a part of like teams and things. It's all that communication and the relationship with one another. Yeah, it's like this whole practice of how can I support her to not continue to repress it? Can she still express what it is that she wants to say in a different way? Then kind of get her to see that there's other ways that she can still express. And like, even when you think about this bottlenecking, like imagine too that the next area is this chest space. So as it comes from up here in your head and you're processing and integrating, you're taking concept and abstract and it comes into form as it goes down, you move into the heart area. Most people only go to the heart. And I'm thinking, do y'all know that right around that heart is huge sets of lungs? That's how much is there in this space.
Yeah.
So imagine that right next to all this joy and love of the heart is grief and sadness. Mm-hmm. And that takes up even a bigger space because it's even that grief, like even for her in that situation, she might be potentially grieving what she thought could have been some dynamic with her father.
Yeah, definitely.
So then how do we process that grief, that loss, while she can still see and maintain her wholeness, and then knowing that what she is desiring is so valid and true for her.
Yeah.
That's the type of dynamics of what I mean when it's like it's navigating the life and then this journey versus it being some type of destination, some expectation on the other, because they may or may not be ready to hear what it is you want to say. They may be at a point for themselves that they may never get to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yet the charge could still be on you as far as, how do I navigate this? How do I actually still maintain my wholeness, still freely express myself? And a part of that is surrender and also observing your expectations.
So when you meet with somebody and they come to you with either a mental health complaint that they want to resolve or a physical complaint that they want to resolve, is this, besides the testing and all of that, is this where you go with people?
Yeah.
This is where I feel like it's really a struggle for people to understand that how they're living, things they're choosing, patterns they're leaning into, that maybe it wasn't their fault that it started, but they're perpetuating them. Like all these things, right? Relationships, environment has such a profound effect on our physical and mental health. And so how do people receive what you have to say? Are people pretty receptive, or is it kind of a struggle for some people?
I will say that they're pretty receptive by the time they get to me. Like if you're just kind of out in social media land, then if all of a sudden you're like, kind of digging what she's saying, then you get that to the inner circle to me. So by the time someone would get to me and then say, yeah, I do want to do this master being consulting thing with you, by that time, all that they know and agree to is, we're going to probably be addressing some stuff that I don't even see or even the things that I do see. And I know that we're probably going to go into it more. Yeah. And so it's like they know that part, which is just enough, which is great. And just enough for them to say like, yes, sign me up. And here's the thing too that I did want to point out is that I'm not in the camp of trying to re-traumatize. Okay. I don't need all of the details of things that happened. Here's why. And I actually have personal experience, and then plus this is clinical experience of even observing it as well. in contemporary Oriental medicine, there is a diagnosis of heart shock, which is something that you don't really see in traditional Chinese medicine. With that, whatever experience it was deemed as a shock to the heart, and therefore affected circulation. We know circulation is head to toe everywhere, deeper depths all the way to the skin surface, right? And that it created some turbulence. And then whether or not you actually recalibrated from that, and it's like, oh, okay, well, we definitely need to get the blood flowing. Well, we need to nourish the blood if it was already a little bit lower, underperforming, right? I'm looking for patterns. When I ask people to neutralize, I'm doing it. I'm an observation. I'm a guide. I'm not here to be the judge and saying, that was great, that was bad, this was horrible, da da da. I'm not there for that. What I'm there for is seeing how you're responding. I'm observing how you're responding, and then seeing through the different lenses, the nuances to that. And then from that space, we can say, well, if this is showing up here, then they're like more spleen, stomach. That is a concept of discerning yourself from other people. That's all I need. For some people, it's a relief because they don't want to have to keep it. Now here's yet another person I got to talk to about this, right? And it's like, all right, cool. I'm not going to ask you for all the nitty gritty details. And here's what happens is it's really interesting. Almost unsolicited. It's not almost, it is. Unsolicitedly, they'll bring it up. But it happens in such a casual way that you can feel that there is no emotional charge. That's when we know then that aspect is good. It's healed, right? That aspect of it, that relationship with whatever it was has changed. Those dynamics have transmuted and they have changed. I intentionally don't say releasing anything either, because energy is neither created nor destroyed. It is transmuted. And so my way that I look at things is you can't unlearn it. It already happened. You can't unlearn it. What we can do, though, is we can transmute our relationship with it.
Yeah.
And notice I said it, like meaning the concept, the pattern. I didn't say the people. So that's where it is people can get tied up, is they're looking at the people only, when really the people are the actors of the concept.
Yeah.
That's why people can see that same pattern popping up, and it comes in different packages and different forms because it's the pattern in and of itself. And so if I can facilitate with you working with you, thought wise, mind wise, emotion wise, right? I'm using the interpretation of how the other physical signals are popping up, and like, okay, this is the nuances here. This is what we can work with. If I see that, oh, you can call on the energy of this food, and this food will nourish the blood to be able to actually go in and get the mind kind of cleared, because the mind is housed in the blood, right? So that we can do all of that. And then if there's this heart shock formula that's modified to the concept, if there's these flower essences that is going to support what we're identifying is your relationship to whatever that experience was, what'll happen is it just works. Well, all of a sudden you notice in these very subtle ways, your behavior will change, yet it comes with such ease and can feel so peaceful. And that's what I look for, is when, like, I get on a call or I might get a text or something saying, like, it's those texts that, oh my gosh, you know how I would usually do XYZ whenever blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, well, guess what happened? Like, this happened. And then, but I didn't flip out, or I was able to communicate this, or I didn't even realize that it happened. Somebody had to point it out to me that I had a different response to it. That is just how ingrained I'm looking for you to see and be your wholeness, is that it comes so naturally. Why? Because it's you. It's your core. It's your home. That's why it feels so familiar. That's why it did come with such ease, because it is you. What in what way? So same way with the acupuncture needle. When you put the needle in, how are we opening up the flow? And the reason why I was able to feel more comfortable and even transitioning out of like traditional clinic was because one of my mentors said to me, and I told her, I was like, I'm just like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen if I don't needle. And she's like, anything that moves the chi becomes the needle. Oh, that's true. And so like, I was like, all right. So that is what happens. That person is just curious enough and ready enough to know that there's something more that they're looking for.
Yeah.
There's a type of existence that they would like more ease in. They're just not quite sure how to do it. Even for many of them, those core desires and the way that they want to be, they're the only one that knows it. And it could be because of a history of, saying it out loud and someone's like, no, that ain't gonna happen, or whatever. And so then now, like, you're not expressing it anymore, or for fear of who around you might not even be there when you really do want them there. But it was enough, like I said, for them to raise their hand and say, I want to work with you, because they've reached that point where they're like, I have to do this for me. Yeah. And I want to do it for me, but I still want to do it sustainably and then still be able to enjoy these rich relationships with other people. And so, like, a lot of the stuff that I put out there and things like that, like, they'll see that I'm talking about, like, usually introverts and empaths, that's common, that come to me, and that they care for other people. They might have gotten to that point, like, I'm done caring for other people. They get taken advantage of. I overdo it, put myself last, and did it. Like, that's what and then what happens is they want to go and try to shut it all down. Yeah, that's where the boundaries thing.
Okay, so if you have a neurodivergent or sensitive kiddo who experiences big emotions and are looking for a way to help them decompress, get grounded, and self-regulate, you've got to check out Outtree. As a therapist and mom, it's my go-to for sensory soothing tools. My daughter loves their sensory swing. After a long day at school, it's her favorite for relaxing and getting focused. It's a safe space to down-regulate her nervous system. You can find the perfect sensory tool for your kiddo and family at outtree.com. OUTREE.com. Use my code MHM for 24% off. You can also check the show notes for the link. So somebody comes to you, whether they identify as an empath or not, somebody comes to you and they're like, I'm tired of caring for all these people. They take advantage. And then they think that the way to heal that or fix that is to completely do the polar opposite or shut it off to the extreme or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's not always the case. So what do you say? What do you do? Like, I want to know your perspective on it, I guess.
When they say that, more than likely it's going to be followed up with, but I don't want to do that because I really do love people and I really do care. It's usually followed up by that. And those are signs too that they are a natural giver. Like, they are a natural person that does care. They do see potential in other people that they want to support them, right? And whatever way that is, that tells me if that's your natural being. So then we just had to find a way for you to still do that in a way that actually is whole to you. And so that's where it is that we start looking at, like, okay, what other things are showing up? Like, oh, you're describing PCOS to me. And then, oh, you're describing like bloating and mucus coming out, like headaches involved that involve more of like a room spinning type of headache. So I was like, oh, so it's really this. This is how we can personalize your filters. I use the term boundaries because that's typically what people say. That's what they're looking for. I call them filters.
Do you see certain patterns in certain types of empath? You were describing specific things, headaches, right? The bloating, the PCO. Okay. Are you seeing clusters of health issues that go along with somebody who maybe is an empath or a giver in a way that isn't honoring to their body and to their...
Yeah.
Okay, we need to talk about that.
They're either going to overdo it or they're going to underdo it. And it'll show up in their body. Empathic qualities, you hear a lot. The languaging that's used is, oh, you're absorbing other people's energy. You're taking too many things on. You hear them describe physical things that are happening. Mm-hmm. And they do describe whether it be like a fluid that is not exactly moving very well. They might feel a heaviness even when they're walking. The type of PCOS that'll come out where it can almost feel weighted in the lower abdomen. There can be vaginal discharge. This is not cervical mucus. This is vaginal discharge. It can come out in pooping where it's looser and all of that. You're taking on, quote unquote, other people's stuff and you have difficulty digesting it.
This is very powerful for people to hear.
And so you can't digest it because it ain't yours to digest.
Right.
That's where it is that we start to explore. Then you have these empathic qualities. We need that actually in the world because it's like a pulse on what's happening in the collective. And then you kind of see what could be put in place or for societies to function well and all of this jazz, right? It's just seeing then, like, now we get to really play. Where did it come from that caring meant that you had to do all of the things for these people?
Yes.
Where is it that now this fear comes up out of them because they don't think that that person can do XYZ? Where is it that you're not allowing and surrendering? Where is it that you're placing expectations on others that is actually, as you're seeking to be seen as an individual in your sovereignty, that you're not doing that for someone else? Where is it that you're giving so much to that angle, that person, that group, and then you're saying, well, I'm not receiving anything from them. Well, who's to say, like, when we give and receive, who said that it needed to come from particularly that A to B? It could have been D that came to A. So this is where it is that you really start to play around with where beliefs came from, how they're thinking. For some, it can be difficult to just all of a sudden be like, can't do that no more for them. So then what'll happen is, all right, well, if that's the pattern that's popping up, how about we take a look at your food? Let's see what's going on there. Then we can see, we want to create some clarity, right? So we want to get the murkiness out. Let's see if we can get you some Job's tears. Let's try that. Let me see. What if we did some cucumbers here? What if we did a little bit of root vegetables? Because you're needing some love. So that's a way that you can use the food energy for them to feel that. So that's just one angle. Then you'll see, okay, are there some herbs that we could potentially use? And the herbs even speak to the mental, emotional. It's not just the physical. So it's like, are there essences? Are there oils? Like, are there other things that we can use that would position them? So once again, kind of thinking about them as a needle, I'm positioning that person to be able to process what's happening in their life. Mm-hmm. So then as they make those shifts and those changes there, just because you make it in one area, you're actually affecting the whole body. Yeah. And so then it'll get to a point that, oh, now mentally we got a little bit more buy-in. Because we just changed and shifted the physical. Okay, now we can work with this. And then they start bringing in bit by bit. It might be like a circumstance with someone, with a spouse or whatever. And then we can jam about it. And then all of a sudden you see like what it is that they are like, I got to do this. It has to be this way versus what they want to do instead.
Yes.
And then seeing like, so just having that sheer clarity as they move through is valuable. It's huge. They feel like once then they can implement it. And then now all of a sudden seeing like, they still love me, or, oh, he did do that. Like, like they're still around. And even then, the ones that choose to not be around, they're like, it's okay. I'm actually cool, because they wouldn't have wanted to be by my side with this anyway. And they would have just slowed me down. Right. Precisely. You're creating the environment internally and externally that's going to support you to be who you are at your core.
Right.
We just have to see what's in that environment, because we're going back to what I was saying. We're always in response to the environment.
Yes.
And so we're assessing and we're creating like the qualities of the internal and the qualities of the external. We can try to be as congruent as possible. That's nourishing the person, nourishing the terrain is what we would call it, instead of trying to like go and eradicate all the bacteria and the viruses and stuff that are a hell of a lot smarter than us. And they will adapt very quickly and very well. But if you can actually focus on the person and on the terrain, then whatever stressors come their way, I'm looking for you to be able to navigate those with more ease while still feeling like you're intact as a whole person.
I love that. So, no, it's really awesome. It's really powerful. And I really wish, now more people will know because we've done this podcast, but I really wish more people understood this. Something that I believe so much with every fiber of my being. And sometimes it's hard to articulate because people will go, well, I need studies and I need this and I need that. And it's like, it's through my own long journey. I'm 42 years old, my own journey with mental health and physical health and trauma and healing, and 13 years of practicing and all the other years of mentoring. And I'm like, I really believe that people can heal themselves for the most part. Okay. Like, obviously, that's not a carte blanche statement to every single circumstance, but I really believe like probably 90%, maybe even more of things, people can heal themselves with the right tools, with the right guidance. They don't have to go to some of these detrimental measures that sometimes they're led to by mainstream, Western medicine and things like that. And I'm not saying all Western medicine is bad either, but what I'm saying is people don't know this. They don't know that they could heal themselves, right? That they could get guidance to walk that path. And it's really disheartening and hard that people really don't know that. And it can be as far as, it's not that they don't know, it's that they believe that they can't.
Yep. And then that's where it is that we're there to remind them that they can.
Yeah.
And while still maintaining our own observational perspective.
Yes.
And our own expectations and honoring that this is their journey. And so it's like, yeah, you're always navigating that. We more than likely can see what it could be for them. And then we still have to honor their journey. And for some, that's enough. Like, yeah, they're still going to come see you. And it's like, even if you can point out any of the smallest or what seems like the smallest, because if we were to try to even neutralize that and not even say it was small, but just any type of behavior change, and then to reflect just from that simple change, what happened, that creates like that cascade. It creates some momentum for them to be able to see. And that's where it is that I look for reflections. And I'm like, you can reflect this stuff for yourself too, right? Like, so that you can see that where it is that for many people, you grew up, like you might have been told, you can't do that. Stop. No. Like it's like, they're saying you're about to walk off a sidewalk and might fall, kind of thing. But we didn't take it that way. We didn't have that, like that context. For some, like they grew up with like, well, I'm the parent. You're just going to do what I tell you anyway. So you didn't even grow up even learning about your own abilities because someone else told you what they were, or someone else just said, this is what you're going to do or not. Right. We're really having to go and explore just how that did influence us into what we're seeing now and who we're seeing now and where they're at right now. But them simply showing up with us tells me that there's something that they know could be different for them.
Yes.
And that's enough to me. Like, that's enough. And I think sometimes too, when it comes down to, especially like with the studies and whatnot, I think what helps is now you can actually hear about how the studies can be skewed and what you see. And like, that's the other thing is when people are talking about, oh, these are peer reviewed journals. And I was like, yeah, sometimes if you actually go back and if you can find it, you'll see what might have been originally submitted was sent back. And they needed to change something in order for it to actually go into that journal. And so for that person, it may have meant more to be in the journal than it was to stand by what their findings were. And then you look at sample sizes. You look at who was even in the sample. Does it even reflect you? Guaranteed. No, because you're personal. Was only you made. So if you weren't in that study, then like it may or may not work for you. Sometimes when I put it into context, now, I say this as somebody that actually loves reading studies. I love reading what research is happening. I love seeing like the innovation and all of that. I find it like so amazing, like so beautiful, right? And then at the same time, though, how can I still use that and take that information, but then still honor the personal person and what is it that we could offer? What can we introduce them to? Or something like that, right? Like, and to get them to see that. Like, that's what I meant when I said, like, some people declare their own prognosis based on a lab, and they might do it based on a study. And so it's like, even with the studies, just as much as we see something that we can find a study that shows that it can't. And so it's like, how much weight do you want to put on that? And I think just some people are really just scared of their own power. I think that they're just scared because it comes with a lot more responsibility. A lot more, like there's the room for excuses and for blaming isn't there anymore. That shielded, that protected you. And then now it's like to go and be able to say like, I did this just because. How many are really comfortable in saying that?
Well, the thing is, to say I did this just because, there's all these people around you who are like, what do you mean just because? What's your reason? That empowered piece comes in because you have to be able to be okay with people questioning you. Not that it's okay, but like people do it naturally, right? People you're in relationship with or whatever. And to have that knowing like, I don't have to explain myself, right? I can just because, and it doesn't have to make sense to somebody else. It only has to make sense for me. The work you're doing is profound because not a lot of people have people in their corner helping them see that it just has to make sense for them, you know?
And I want to say something as you said that this came up for me as well. And I don't know if it's just because I'm seeing it a lot, but it's like, yeah, it just needs to make sense for you. What I'm seeing though is that some are even justifying it based on an identity and a diagnosis. And I just want them to be aware of when they're doing that. Because even then, it's still remember that you're going to be evolving as a person. The evolution of yours, how long are you going to keep that in context of an identity of a diagnosis? So it's like to just be aware of this is what someone has diagnosed me with, whatever, that's fine. And I'm doing this just because. It's not because of ADHD. It's not because of even then, and you're an empath, like it's not because of chronic illness, warrior, and all this other stuff like that. No, it's just you, period. For people to get comfortable even with that, because those diagnoses and those identities actually are a form of shielding and protection and boundary. Well, because, and think about it, like this is how people can trap themselves because when you lead with that, you are actually telling people how to treat you.
Yes.
You're training people how to see you, which can be actually paradoxical for the person because they want to be seen as themselves. They don't want to be seen by their diagnosis. But yet you introduce yourself as this person with this diagnosis. And then with that, you have no idea the other person on the other end, what their experience is like with that diagnosis, their interaction with that diagnosis. So this is why when there's this like overgeneralization with these, like you don't really know. I'd much rather just go out and be like, yeah, I'm Denicia. Maybe in conversation, you'll find out about some other stuff, that's going on.
Right.
But because I see it a lot, because you see that happening even then when there's the healing that can occur is we end up having to explore what does that mean if this diagnosis fell off? What does it mean if that identity was not there?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. This came up for me recently. I was talking with my husband and I'm like, what is it? I've been thinking about what it's going to mean if I'm not X, Y, and Z anymore as I was like transmuting through some healing. And I'm like, I've identified that way for so long. What does that mean now for me that I'm not air quote that, or that's not going to be a part of what I consider my identity? And it was very interesting because it's very powerful how we label ourselves, how we think about ourselves, the diagnoses or the labels or whatever. And it can literally quite shape the trajectory of our life,
Precisely. Because it's that inherent wanting for such beautiful beings. It's this, I want to be myself, yet I want to be connected with other people. And this is where it is that you're invited to see in what ways would you like to be connected with other people? What is it that y'all are in agreement on? It doesn't necessarily have to be a diagnosis, right? Now, are there points in time in your phases that actually would be so supportive? Yes. And then at the same time, just be aware of where you're at in your evolution and when it's time that you might be looking for different types of connection. Yeah. And then being open for that to change. So for some, they just want to like still keep it up and still stick with it, right? This had me thinking about like Dr. Martinez's work when it comes to studying centenarians, and like he's a cultural anthropologist, and what he had found, like perspective of one's health it actually showed up and changed their blood chemistry because they would be in these groups of people that only really talked about their diseases or their conditions, their doctor's appointments. Oh, my knees. Oh, my back. Like all of this versus the ones who didn't do that because they weren't with friends that did that. They took them out. They even did a study where they took them out of that and put them somewhere else. And their blood chemistry changed to where it had improved. But then when they came out of it and put it back, blood chemistry changed back to what it was because
Wild.
it's environment, and you are in environments, different types all the time. And so it is, yes, being aware of that. Like, which environments are you in? What are the common sayings amongst each other? And these aren't just sayings coming out of your mouth. More than likely is showing up in your body. Someone's talking about someone being a pain in the ass to you. Oh, do you have sciatica? Like,
Right.
I'm so serious about that, right?
Yeah.
Like, or, oh, this person is pissing me off. And then you talking about recurrent UTIs. Do you see what I'm saying? And it couldn't even just be that person, but it could be something happening like just around you. And your language is literally dictating what's happening in the body. If you find yourself repeating certain phrases or you're hearing these phrases because of the communities and the groups that you're in, that is where it is that you can really shift it for yourself because your awareness of it now has moved to consciousness. Now it's conscious choice. And here's the thing. I'm cool either way. I'm just your neutral facilitator. And you know what I mean? Like that's just where I'm at. I just want you to be aware of what's happening. And then for you to realize your power of choice, you're going to make the choice. And then what? Okay, cool. So what's your inspiration steps for that? Or to go like, how is that integrating? How is that resonating with your authentic being? Does it go along with that or doesn't it? Kind of think if it does, then we won't really see these other signals popping up. If it doesn't, we'll see something. It's so, someone's going to come up because we can try to reason and logicize, like you said. And I'm same way. Oh, I could be very mental about a lot of stuff and I could overthink a lot of things. And then that's when it is that like, especially when I'm like really confused on how to deal with something, I'd be like, you know what? I have been feeling this. I've been feeling this around my hips. So that must mean that I am really struggling with the choice. But then what about the choice? Is it that I don't believe that it can happen? Is it that somebody might not buy into it? Is it that I don't have enough information? Like, so then I start really going in and exploring that. And then just simply kind of becoming aware of that and exploring it. Then I could feel it go away. I could feel it like start to assuage. Because all I needed was for me to just pay attention to that was going on. Now, whether or not I implement, that's a whole nother thing, right? Like if so, did I implement it? Did I not? Like in what ways? And so did I need support? Do I need more support? And if I did, then in what ways does that look like? And so that's how it is that people even then gain clarity. It's not just about what it is that they're desiring, but they're gaining clarity about what's in these environments that they need in their care team and all of that stuff too. You become very clear and then being able to communicate it as well.
I love this. Okay. In wrapping up, is there anything else you want the audience to know? I feel like we've given them a lot to chew on.
Digest very slowly and you have the enzymes coming from the divine.
You want to say, because I think sometimes when people hear podcasts like this, it's like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. I don't even know where to begin. It's like, you just have to begin. You don't need to go, we said a lot of things. You shared a lot of things. You don't start out doing all those things, right? It's like little step by little step. That's what I always encourage people is you just have to take the first step. And then you'll take the next step when you're ready. And the next step, you'll get clarity along the way. You don't have to eat the whole elephant at once. That's not even possible. I'd love to just hear if you have any parting words of wisdom. All of your links are going to go into the show notes so people will be able to find you and grab your information and connect with you. But do you have anything else you want to add in like closing to this conversation?
Yeah. One, I would say if they reach to the end, you actually completed a step. Yay!
I love it. That's
so,
yes.
You already did it. So I'm like, Woohoo. And now it's like, all right, so what's next? And I would say that, let me just let you know that when you're looking at healing and you're looking at health, it's been very convoluted. And I'm going to tell you that the root meaning of health is whole, is actually coming to wholeness. Did you know that the root meaning of perfect is wholeness? If there's anything that I could encourage anyone to see is that you are whole, then you're complete, you are perfect, and you can be who you would like to be and express that. And it's just going to take you realizing that you're whole, but you're already here at this point. So you're like, actually, yeah. And it's just the journey of coming and being in your wholeness. That's all that it is. And everything else is just icing and frosting on the cake.
I love that. That's amazing. Thank you for the time that you've spent with us today. You guys go check Denicia out. All of her links are going to be in the show notes so that you can check out her website and her social media. I encourage you, if this resonated, to have a consultation with her at the very least.
Yay. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you. Oh, you guys, we'll see you next time. I am eternally grateful you tuned into The Truth About Mental Health. If this message matters to you, please spread the word by subscribing, leaving a 5-star review, and sharing with someone who needs this knowledge. Let's keep reclaiming our mental health together.